Zweite Station, sowas noch. Ich möchte keinen bei der zweiten Station anlaufen. Krieg mal hin.
Steer and manage without question. And I'd implore you to look up Randall Bunkett and Dunsany Estates and how his growing deer population intuitively manage his woodland to perfection without any interference from him. His ecosystems maintain balance naturally. We learn that in primary school. I've seen farmers liberally scatter rat poison open to any passing wildlife, and then laugh as they kick poisoned rodents into the pig pens to be eaten. One of countless hideous incidents I could share. But the point is, these wild species, persecuted largely by farmers and the rural elite, are, unbeknownst to them, essential to everything they hold dear. Badgers play a vital role in ecosystems. They're very important predators. And ironically, their unique predation of small mammals likely provides protection to a lot of other livestock diseases. Small mammals are of course all over farms because, once again, our fault. They are filthy and there's feed everywhere. Rewilded ecosystems can store and sequester carbon, reduce effects of flooding and climate change, vital for future farming. What doesn't do that is livestock grazing. So this trendy term that we hear a lot, regenerative farming, was manufactured by the industry to make us feel better about continuously consuming their damaging products. What's actually regenerating in regenerative farming? It's not biodiversity, and it certainly isn't the cow. In fact, the only species that really seem to benefit from livestock grazing are dung beetles. If we were to introduce more widely a level of livestock into wild spaces that could just about be maintained without causing huge damage, we would afford ourselves approximately one piece of meat a year. So beware these constantly emerging fairy tales. The reality is that industrial agriculture has taken hold of Britain. We are outnumbered by farmed animals, live land animals slaughtered each year, 18 to 1. And this has obviously come through rising demand. Over a third of our pig and poultry industries are effectively owned by global meat giants. 85% of our farmed animals are factory farms. And that figure doesn't include things like RSPCA assured farms, which I can assure you are essentially factory farming. We also import huge amounts of these products, plus feed for our animals, using 1.4 times our land footprint to do so. So consider what goes into these animals and then comes out in the slurry. Vaccines, hormones, antibiotics, parasiticides, steroids, anti-inflammatories. The sheer volume of chemicals, disinfectants, biocides used by the gallon, the single-use plastics, the poisons, the toxic fly-bait, rodenticides, the list goes on. Just 50 cows are capable of emitting the equivalent amount of pollution as a human settlement of 10,000 people. The Environment Agency have clearly stated that the majority of river pollution comes from farming, and that the majority of inspected dairy farms have been actively polluting in breach of regulations. Back to TB, needless to say, spreading vast quantities of infected feces all over our grazing land, crops and waterways is a bit of a risk for maintaining and spreading disease. So this and many other good points were made in the Brian May documentary, I'm sure everybody watched. But I feel there's a couple of points in that I want to address. Firstly, desperate farming families seeing cattle slaughtered, crying as they, quote, load up their best animals in their prime of life. Somebody's got to say it. That is the entire business model for animal farming. As someone who's been involved in and I say this as someone from a farming family, I've seen the emotion, but as someone who's been involved in mass culls and has the PTSD to show for it, it's not nice. But why are we having to do it in the first place? And how is it different to business as usual? Secondly, the fury of being forced to diversify, forced to change, as if every other business doesn't have to adapt to societal progress and modern knowledge. The suggestion that not forcing animals to live knee-deep in their own shit might be a good place to start in terms of disease control really triggered the NFU, didn't it? We appear to have collectively lost our minds on this one. Can anyone think of a single disease we've managed to eradicate without an effective vaccine, a test that actually works, or appropriate biosecurity measures? They're not doing farmers any favours with this blunt resistance to change. The government popping them up with subsidies and bailouts are ultimately not helping. For some reason, over a century of having this disease, we're still not implementing scientifically relevant options. Why? Trade, money. So it always comes back to this. As long as they're able to sell a product, I'm afraid they don't give a damn about health, life, and environment. A good example of this, last year, AHPV4, which was the legendary for the pig industry, acted on clear messages from members to focus on marketing, exports and reputation. And so they've ditched their pig health scheme, which was health monitoring at abattoirs, and their real welfare outcome scheme, meaning that vets don't have to perform any sort of objective welfare assessment on retracted farms. It's incredible they feel confident publishing that. So what's the solution? Where do we place that hope that I felt a little flicker of during lockdown? Those of you that attended the Restore Nature Now March this year, I'm sure will have noticed that almost all of the speakers emphasise that we must rewild. This is the key to every problem we're facing. But then, other than really Dale Vince, sadly isn't here today, didn't explicitly allude to exactly where the land for that rewilding will come from and what is actually required of us to free up that land. So if you take away nothing else from this, let it be this. 76% of farmland could be rewilded. This is globally nearly a quarter of our entire land mass freed up for wildlife. And badger culling would obviously be irrelevant at that point. I haven't plucked this out of thin air. The largest study to date was a recent comprehensive meta-analysis that looked at nearly 40,000 farms. The team of researchers at Oxford University started that study omnivores and ended it vegan. They concluded that the single biggest thing we can do for the planet and its inhabitants, including the badgers, is to be vegan. And fundamentally, manufacturers supply what consumers consume. Of course, systemic change is needed from corporates and governments, but don't let that stop you from doing the right thing. Those profiting want us to think that these problems are insurmountable by the average person, but we have 65 million average people here in Britain, so don't ever let anyone make you think you are insignificant. Please always question the intentions of those selling your products. I saw misleading information and outright lies leave the lips of those that I once respected and trusted. My illusion of British farming was shattered quite spectacularly, despite starting off with an already significantly above average insight. Despite my best efforts, I could improve nothing for the animals that I was so desperately wanting to protect. To prevent meaningful change or adjustments to the status quo that serves them, these industries, much like our friends at the fossil fuel lobby, are buying scientists, funding dodgy studies, cherry picking, splashing millions on marketing, infiltrating every committee and round table and lining the pockets of our political representatives. So for the badgers, I urge you to let this new government feel the full force of your disgust. Labour are clear in understanding that this cull is ineffective, so why are they still pandering? As a practitioner of law, I'm certain Starmer is capable of working out how to revoke licences granted by his predecessors. I'm sure your representatives are armed with information and know how their constituents feel. Empower them to be less scared of big quality taxes. So some also find a way to deal with carbon protests as a result. Behaving some refugees and rather than wasting everyone's time on orange cornstarch. But we desperately need more people telling the whole truth, piecing this together and having the courage to speak up. The destruction of badgers is merely a symptom of a much greater disease, one that we must face with urgency. So on ending the cull, I must speak plainly. We cannot support the dairy and meat industries whilst fighting for badgers. That doesn't work. We cannot consume animals while simultaneously fighting for them. We cannot exploit without consequence. So to restore nature, we must remove the unnatural. I can tell you that there's nothing less natural than our farming animals. And this fight to save nature is everyone's fight, because we are nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice, for those passionate words. The next speaker is responsible for most of the photographs you see around us. She's one of the leading wildlife photographers in the world, and she's also the favourite shot you come back. So, Rachel Dixon.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us all here today. As Peter said, my name is Rachel Bixby. I am Badger Trust Youth Ambassador, and I'm also a wildlife photographer. And I've been documenting our friend the European badger for many, many years now, including filming the European badgers that you would have seen on Sir David Attenborough's Wild Isles. Now today I want to take you on a bit of a journey to my badger set and to share a typical evening with my clan with you. But the difference is this time you are going to be the photographer. Now wildlife photography is a portal to another world where the boundaries of time and space do blur, allowing us to witness the beauty and untamed spirit of nature. In this instance, the wildlife photography transports us to the woodlands of Sussex, offering an intimate glimpse into the lives of the European badger. Now I want everyone to take a deep breath and to close their eyes. And imagine a very calm evening in early spring in the heart of an ancient woodland, carpeted in bluebells with their delicate petals swaying gently like tiny bells being rung by the soft evening breeze. The air is cool and it smells sweet, and as you walk along a sun-dappled path, listening to the whispers of the trees and the songs of the birds, you arrive at the badger set. Now you're crouched low and suddenly a rustling sound captures your attention. It's a soft rhythmic shuffle that comes from a tangle of ferns nearby. At this point your breath is held and your heart quickens with a mix of excitement and of wonder. And then you see it, a shadow moving gracefully between the trees. It's a European badger emerging from its set, the home it shares with generations of its family. Now the surrounding forest is a tangle of towering trees, their trunks reaching skyward. The light filters through the canopy above, creating a warm, almost mystical halo that frames the badger's face, casting a soft light on its silvery coat. Like a gentle path into the heart of the serene woodlands, the badger stands surrounded in a sea of bluebells that blur into a delicate lavender haze. True to its nature, the badger appears as a shy and inquisitive figure. Its eyes are wide and alert, but full of curiosity and a slight touch of caution. Its iconic black and white mask are a striking contrast around the delicate colours of surrounding